She was humiliated by her husband, but he regrets it when he sees her on TV. Dear viewers, welcome to our channel. Subscribe to receive more stories every day. Anna sat across the polished granite countertop, her hands folded neatly, her gaze steady, and her heart sinking. The air between her and Richard, her husband of 10 years, was as thick as fog. He was silent, his jaw set, eyes icy. Just hours earlier, they had argued. No, he had argued, and she had listened, enduring his condescension, his dissatisfaction, and now, his final verdict. Anna, this isn't working anymore, he said, his voice void of warmth, the remnants of any affection long gone. He looked at her, lips pressed into a line. You're just not enough for me. I can't keep pretending that this life we're building is making me happy. Her breath hitched. The room seemed to close in around her, each word landing like a stone in her chest. They'd been building a life together, or so she had thought. She had supported his ambitions, adapted to his every whim, played the role of a dutiful wife, and suppressed her own dreams for years. How could he dismiss her like this? Anna, he continued, his voice tinged with impatience. It's not just you. I've changed too. I need more than what you can give. What exactly do you need that I can't give, Richard? She asked, her voice a mix of desperation and bewilderment. Excitement, Anna. Passion, ambition. I need a partner who brings something new to the table. He looked her over, his eyes sweeping across her, as if she were a stranger, someone less than the woman who had once stood by his side. And honestly, Anna, you've become dull. The word hung in the air, suffocating. She had sacrificed everything for him, setting her ambitions aside to be his rock, his confidant. And now he dared to call her dull? I've been thinking, he said, not waiting for her response, about what's best for both of us. He cleared his throat, his tone detached. I think we need to separate. I'll ensure you're taken care of for a while, but after that, you're on your own. The words hit her like a cold slap. He was discarding her just like that. She felt her world shatter as Richard, once the center of her life, reduced her to nothing more than a temporary obligation. What about Sarah? She whispered, thinking of their young daughter, the innocent child asleep upstairs, blissfully unaware of the turmoil brewing below. Richard gave a dismissive wave. Sarah will be fine. I'll visit when I can, but I think it's best she stays with you. He had already planned it all out. She realized every detail decided without her input, her needs, or her dreams considered. The shock numbed her, yet her heart burned with betrayal. How could he be so cold, so calculating? But she didn't cry, not here, not in front of him. Summoning the last of her dignity, she stood, pushing back the tears that threatened to spill. I'll go, she whispered, her voice firm yet fragile. That night, she packed in silence, gathering her belongings and her daughter, who barely stirred as they left. She couldn't bear to stay in the house that had once been her home, now only a shell of what she thought it was. As she shut the door behind her, she knew she would never look back. Anna's life became a whirlwind of change. Without financial support from Richard beyond a pittance, she struggled to make ends meet, navigating a world that felt foreign and cold. She moved into a small apartment, the walls thin, the rooms cramped, but it was her sanctuary, a place where she could start to rebuild herself. Days bled into weeks, each one filled with uncertainty. She worked at a small cafe, taking extra shifts to scrape by, her dreams and ambitions buried beneath the weight of survival. Yet, through the exhaustion, a fire began to kindle within her. She found solace in her writing, something she hadn't touched since her marriage to Richard had consumed her life. Each night, after putting Sarah to bed, she would sit at her tiny desk, a second-hand laptop in front of her, and write. She poured her soul onto the page, transforming her pain into words, each sentence a catharsis. Her story began to take shape, the narrative following a woman's journey through betrayal, heartbreak, and rebirth. The more she wrote, the more her despair lifted, replaced by a growing sense of purpose. Her book, she decided, would be a testament to her journey, a raw, unfiltered reflection of her pain and resilience. She wrote late into the night, her exhaustion outweighed by the need to tell her story. It was no longer just a personal project. It became her lifeline, her way of reclaiming the voice Richard had tried to silence. As she wrote, she found herself uncovering hidden layers of strength. The words flowed, a torrent of emotions she had suppressed for years. She wrote about love, betrayal, sacrifice, and the strength it took to rise from the ashes. In the story, she transformed herself into a heroine, a woman who fought back, who refused to be defined by anyone else's limitations. Months passed, and Anna's manuscript grew. She poured every ounce of her being into it, her passion and pain interwoven into each chapter. By the time she finished, she felt as though she had not only written a novel, but also reclaimed her soul. Submitting the manuscript to a publisher felt surreal, a leap of faith she hadn't dared take before. She sent it off with a mixture of hope and trepidation, unsure if anyone would even read it. But within weeks, she received a call. A publisher had fallen in love with her story, captivated by the raw honesty and powerful themes. They wanted to publish her book. The news filled her with an exhilaration she hadn't felt in years. Her story, her journey, was about to reach the world. Her words would resonate with others, and she would finally reclaim her voice. Months later, Anna sat in a quiet, dimly lit room, her daughter asleep in the next room. Her book was on the verge of release, her publisher confident it would be a bestseller. Pre-orders had flooded in, social media was abuzz, and interviews were lined up. She had poured her heart into this project, and now the world would see her for who she truly was, not as a discarded wife, but as a woman of strength and resilience. Finally, the day came. Anna's book hit the shelves, her face gracing the cover of magazines, her story reaching millions. She appeared on television, her poise and eloquence captivating viewers nationwide. But one person in particular couldn't look away as she spoke, his face twisted in a mixture of shock and regret. Richard, sitting in his opulent living room, watched as Anna commanded the screen, her story one of triumph over betrayal. The words she spoke cut deep, resonating with truths he had tried to ignore. She was no longer the woman he had abandoned. She was a force to be reckoned with, her story a revelation he could not escape. As she recounted her journey, the truth hit him with brutal clarity. He was the villain of her story, and the world was now watching his downfall unfold before their eyes. The release of Shattered Vows was an eruption. Within days, Anna's book hit the bestseller list, capturing readers' hearts with its raw honesty, its universal message of resilience and rebirth. Bookstores sold out. Online platforms scrambled to keep up with the demand, and soon, everyone seemed to be talking about the quiet woman who had written a masterpiece of survival. Each chapter was a mirror reflecting her pain, triumph, and newfound strength. Readers devoured her words, and her story resonated with people from every walk of life. Those who had loved deeply, those who had been betrayed, and those who needed a reminder that rising from the ashes was possible. Anna found herself swept up in a whirlwind of publicity. Interviews, book signings, and talk shows filled her days. Each appearance met with admiration and curiosity. She handled it all with poise, her quiet strength captivating audiences. People wanted to know the woman behind the book, to hear her story directly from her lips. She spoke of strength, resilience, and the journey she had taken from despair to empowerment. With each interview, she shared a piece of herself, her words inspiring others to face their own hardships. Yet, in her heart, she knew there was one person whose reaction would differ, who would see in her story a painful, unforgiving reflection of himself. Richard had initially ignored the buzz surrounding Shattered Vows, dismissing it as another romance memoir that would fade into obscurity. But when colleagues and friends mentioned it in hushed tones and curious glances, he began to feel a flicker of unease. The murmurs grew louder, until one day, an article landed on his desk, the headline reading, "From Heartbreak to Bestseller: How One Woman's Story of Betrayal is Inspiring Millions." It was then that he felt a pit form in his stomach. He tried to brush it off, dismissing Anna's success as a fleeting moment in the spotlight. But it was more than that. The article hinted at secrets, details that only someone close to him could know. He picked up a copy of the book, and the very first chapter shook him to his core. It was their story, his cruelty, her suffering, and the betrayal he had orchestrated, laid bare for the world to see. The realization that he was the antagonist, the villain in the narrative, left him reeling. Anna hadn't just written a book. She had exposed him, using their life together as the foundation of her tale. He clenched his jaw, recalling the cold words he'd thrown at her, the way he had reduced her to nothing in his eyes. Now, it was as if those words were etched on the pages of her book, their ugliness immortalized for anyone to read. She hadn't used his name, but the details were unmistakable to those who knew them. And as her book spread, so did the subtle whispers about his character, about the real-life man who had shattered her world. Desperate, he turned on the TV, hoping to catch an interview, a glimpse of Anna that might clarify her intentions. And there she was, sitting across from a famous talk show host, her expression serene yet strong, her every word charged with conviction. She recounted her story with grace, her honesty unwavering. Watching her, he felt a surge of regret, a bitterness he couldn't swallow. She was no longer the quiet, subservient wife he had left behind. She was powerful, beautiful, and respected. "What inspired you to write Shattered Vows?" the host asked, his voice warm. Anna took a deep breath, her gaze steady. "I wanted to show people that there's life after heartbreak. That even when someone takes everything from you, you have the power to rebuild, to transform your pain into something meaningful." The audience erupted in applause, and Richard felt his throat tighten. She had transformed, emerged from the shadow of the woman he had dismissed as dull. He had tried to silence her, to erase her worth, and she had used his betrayal as the foundation of her success. He wanted to believe it was coincidence, that her book was just a fictional story with no connection to him. But as the interview continued, Anna revealed subtle details, clues that felt like shards of glass. She spoke of the pain of sacrificing dreams for another person, of the loneliness that consumed her as her partner's love turned to indifference. She never named him, but her voice held a quiet rage, a strength that cut through the screen. The host leaned forward, captivated. "And where is the person who broke your heart now?" Anna paused, her eyes unreadable, a slight smile touching her lips. "I don't know. I'm not looking back." It was a dagger, a final cut that left Richard frozen. He had once been the center of her world, the one she had sacrificed everything for, and now she had no interest in his existence. Anna's rise to fame didn't slow. Her story struck a chord with women and men alike, resonating with anyone who had ever been wronged, overlooked, or underestimated. Letters poured in from readers, thanking her for her bravery, for reminding them that they too could overcome the darkest moments of their lives. Meanwhile, Richard's world began to unravel. His colleagues regarded him with a mixture of pity and judgment. His friends withdrew, uncomfortable with the rumors, the whispers that he was the inspiration behind Anna's book. Business partners hesitated, wary of the scandalous reputation that now clung to him. Every glance, every whisper, was a reminder of the life he had discarded, the woman he had underestimated. Desperate to reclaim some control, Richard tried to contact Anna, but she was unreachable. Her publishers shielded her from him. Her number changed, her address a mystery. She had moved beyond his reach, her life expanding as it closed in around him. In the midst of the chaos, Anna received a call from a prestigious media company. They wanted to turn her book into a film, an adaptation that would bring her story to the big screen, amplifying its message and impact. She was stunned, the magnitude of her success overwhelming. Her story was no longer just hers. It had become a symbol, a beacon for those who had suffered in silence. The news spread, and soon, Shattered Vows was everywhere. Billboards, magazine covers, social media, all bearing her name, her face. She had become a household name, her story immortalized, and her strength an inspiration to millions. Richard watched it all unfold. Each new success a reminder of his failure, his cruelty, his short-sightedness. He couldn't escape her, not in the media, not in his social circles. She was everywhere, and her success felt like a reckoning, a relentless reminder that he had tried to break her and failed. At night, as he lay alone in his lavish but empty home, he couldn't escape the gnawing regret, the bitterness of his mistake. He had once believed she was beneath him, that she offered him nothing, but now the world adored her, cherished her, and he was left on the outside, forgotten and shamed. Anna, meanwhile, found peace. Her life had changed beyond her wildest dreams, yet her heart remained grounded. She took time to cherish her success, but her greatest joy came from spending time with Sarah, who watched her mother's rise with pride and awe. Anna had finally shown her daughter the strength it took to stand up, to fight back, and to find beauty in resilience. As her story continued to reach new heights, she began to consider her next project. Writing had given her a voice, a means to heal and inspire, and she knew her journey wasn't over. She would write again, perhaps another novel that would shed light on the strength of those who had been silenced. And as for Richard, he remained a specter of her past, a figure she no longer had any reason to think of. Her life was rich with purpose, her story resonant with the truth she had reclaimed. As Shattered Vows climbed to the top of every bestseller list, Anna found herself at the pinnacle of a life she could scarcely have dreamed of. Her journey, once a personal battle against despair, had transformed her into a voice of empowerment, reaching beyond the pages of her book to become a force of change for others. The film adaptation moved into production, with a renowned director at the helm and an award-winning actress cast to play her. Anna was consulted on every aspect, from casting to dialogue, ensuring her story's authenticity would resonate on screen. The premiere was set to be a grand event, with press coverage, celebrity appearances, and a red carpet awaiting her. Despite the whirlwind of her newfound fame, Anna never lost sight of her roots or the journey that had led her here. She continued to write, channeling her energy into a new book, one that would offer not just her story, but the stories of others who had overcome betrayal, hardship, and grief to build new lives. Her mission had grown beyond herself. She wanted to shine a light on the resilience of countless others who had faced similar battles. Meanwhile, Richard's life unraveled with astonishing speed. As Shattered Vows grew in popularity, his reputation suffered a death by 1,000 cuts. Colleagues distanced themselves, his social circle dissipated, and his business ventures floundered. He became a pariah, his success tainted by the public's disdain, the whispers of his callousness, his betrayal, and his cruelty. At first, he had tried to deny it, brushing off the accusations, clinging to the belief that Anna's success would fade. But the truth was inescapable. Every headline, every mention of her name, every advertisement for her film was a reminder of the woman he had underestimated and of the man he had become. One evening, he found himself alone in his office, the silence heavy. The walls were adorned with framed awards, reminders of his once celebrated life. But now they felt like hollow relics, reminders of the emptiness that had taken over his world. He reached for the copy of Shattered Vows he had once discarded in anger. He'd read it before, but this time he read it slowly, absorbing every word, every sentence, every moment of pain he had caused. As he turned the final page, a realization settled over him, a deep, gut-wrenching understanding of the damage he had inflicted, the love he had squandered. It wasn't just his career that had crumbled. It was the very foundation of his life. He had betrayed not only Anna but himself, sacrificing everything meaningful for a hollow pursuit of status and wealth. For the first time, he found himself wanting to apologize, not to reclaim her love, but to make amends, to somehow alleviate the weight of his mistakes. But as he picked up his phone, he realized that reaching out now would mean nothing. She was far beyond his reach, her world brighter, fuller, a place he no longer belonged. The film's premiere arrived, a dazzling event filled with flashing lights, journalists, and admirers. Anna stepped onto the red carpet, her daughter Sarah by her side, now a young woman with the same quiet strength as her mother. They were met with cheers, the world captivated by the woman who had turned her pain into triumph. The film received standing ovations, critics lauding it as a powerful story of resilience. an ode to survival and rebirth. Anna watched from the audience, her heart filled with gratitude, pride, and a sense of closure she hadn't known she needed. In the months that followed, Anna's second book hit the shelves. It was not a story of personal betrayal, but an anthology of survival stories from women and men across the globe, each one a testament to the human spirit's ability to overcome. It, too, became a bestseller, further cementing her as a writer and voice of empowerment. Years passed, and Anna's life continued to flourish. She found new love, a partner who respected her and cherished her journey. Together, they created a home filled with laughter, love, and understanding, a contrast to the life she had once known. She continued to write, her words a beacon for those who needed solace, inspiration, and courage. Richard, meanwhile, faded into obscurity, his life reduced to a shadow of its former glory. He had lost his wealth, his connections, his influence, everything he had once held dear. Alone, he faced the consequences of his actions, haunted by the memories of the life he had thrown away. One day, as he strolled through a quiet bookstore, he caught sight of shattered vows displayed on a shelf, its cover marked with awards and acclaim. He picked it up, feeling a pang of regret as he thumbed through its pages. He was no longer angry, no longer resentful. Only a hollow sense of loss remained, a reminder of the woman he had once known and the life he had forsaken. As he placed the book back on the shelf, he realized that Anna's story was not his to hold anymore. She had risen from the ashes of his betrayal, built a life of meaning and purpose, while he was left with nothing but memories and regret. Years later, Anna's legacy lived on. Her books continued to inspire, her voice a symbol of hope and resilience. Her journey had become a legend, a story passed down, not of bitterness, but of triumph and strength. She had not only rebuilt herself, she had created a life rich with purpose, her past a testament to her courage and her future a beacon of light for others to follow. In the end, she had won, not just over Richard, but over the pain, the betrayal, and the darkness that had once threatened to consume her. She had reclaimed her life, her voice, and her place in the world, standing tall as a woman who had turned heartbreak into power, who had become the hero of her own story. The world remembered Anna not as the woman who had been discarded, but as the one who had risen, stronger than ever, a reminder to all that even in the darkest of times, there is always the strength to rebuild and to thrive. And so, the best-selling Betrayal came to a close, with Anna's story reaching the hearts of millions, her legacy enduring, a testament to the strength of the human spirit. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. If you like this story, please subscribe to our channel to receive more stories every day. Share with us what you think of this story.